Welcome to Early Morning Catechism. We are now back into ordinary time. This year, the church is in cycle B, and so for most of the rest of the year, every Sunday we will hear a gospel story from the Gospel of Mark. Let me begin by telling you a story. Every year, I have my confirmation students and their sponsors go through a booklet, and for each page they are asked to read a gospel story and to discuss it, and thus walk through the entire life of Jesus through the course of confirmation prep. The first session was an introductory session, and when they came together for the second session, I immediately told them to go to the last page of the booklet. The topic was the resurrection. And they went off and they discussed with their sponsors, and then they came back to the large group, and the first thing I asked them was, why did we do this? Why did we not start with the birth of Jesus and proceed through his life in chronological order? Well, there was a long silence, and finally one of the students raised his hand and he said this: "It is the end of the story that gives relevance to all the rest of it." And I said to myself, that kid should have been confirmed yesterday because he's got it. It is the end of the story that gives relevance to all the rest of it. So how does Mark's gospel begin? It begins with this sentence: "The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God." The very first sentence in Mark's gospel is a resurrection sentence, because he is calling Jesus the Christ and the Son of God. People did not fully grasp the meaning of Jesus as the Christ, the Messiah, and the Son of God until after he had risen from the dead and the Holy Spirit had come upon the community. And so before Mark begins, and he begins with the public life of Jesus, before he even tells you anything about John the Baptist or the baptism of Jesus or anything, he gives you a resurrection statement, which means that all the stories in his gospel have something to say about Jesus and his life, but also about the life of the community where the presence of the risen Lord is experienced. There's another feature of Mark's gospel that I would like to explain to you. It's something called the messianic secret. And people always wonder, well, what is that secret about? Messianic, of course, refers to Jesus as Messiah, but there were different connotations of what the Messiah was supposed to be like. Jesus as Messiah is the Son of God. And throughout the gospel, when Jesus performs miracles, he tells people, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. And that is a pattern through the whole gospel. And finally we get to the crucifixion in chapter 15, and the centurion standing at the foot of the cross says, "Truly this was the Son of God." And so the messianic secret is, Jesus is not a Messiah because he's a miracle worker. He's the Messiah because he is the Son of God who has saved the world. And so as we read the gospel, any story of it, we have to ask ourselves, what does this say to me about the risen Lord living in the community today? In other words, when you read this gospel, put on your resurrection eyeglasses.